Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Based on the time you are accessing this material, welcome to Kuulchat.com, and this is web design course. And today we are going to consider week 3. If you are accessing this material on YouTube, this is a course taught on Kuulchat.com, and we have the course content on the site, so you can visit Kuulchat.com to have access to the code so that it will be easy for you to do modification of them instead of typing everything from scratch. So if this is your first time, we've already done week 1 and week 2, so you can make reference to them before watching week 3 video. And you can, if you go to courses, information technology, or if you scroll to the bottom and it's one of the popular courses, then you see it also on the front page and just click on it. So that's web design, so you can also click on it directly. And you need to you have to create an account, and on the front page there is chat with an instructor. So once you've created an account and you log in, when you click on chat with an instructor, you will get a chat box and you can send me a message. If you have any challenge with your coding, you can just take a snapshot or send me a message and we'll know how to resolve the problem for you. So week 3, what are we going to learn? So week 3, we will look at Css properties and the display properties. So we look at the display block, inline block. Then we look at position. We have relative, fixed, absolute. Then we'll also look at colors and font, background, border styles, and the rest. Okay, so you just click on the graduation curve to get started. So by default, the elements that are the display block means it covers a horizontal space. So if you want to display one element next to each other, then it's not possible because it will take the entire horizontal space. So you cannot have one element next to each other. There are some other elements that are already inline, like link, like the A tag. For the A tag, you can have a list of them. They all be in line with each other. But for div, the div that we'll be writing, by default, it is block. So it covers the entire space. So if you're writing a page where you want the divs to be in line with each other, then how are you going to do that? So that is what we are going to consider now. So that one, we call it inline block. So you set the display to be inline block. And an example also is the list items. List items are also given the display block. So if you are using the list li, the ul and the li list. If you are using them for a menu and you want them to be horizontal, then you have to set the attribute, the display attribute to be inline block, so that each of the li will be inline to each other, as we've seen in our previous weeks. I think week 1 or week 2, one of them we look at it. Okay, so I'm going to explain this the code for you, but I'm going to zoom it so that you can see it clearer while I'm explaining it. And the place where I need to code myself, then I'll go to my notepad and start the coding. Okay, so like I've explained, the display attribute of a block value covers the entire width until the inline block, which covers a part of the space and other element div can as well continue. So with the inline block, it doesn't take the entire space, but the display the entire horizontal space. So if you want one div to be next to each other, then you have to change its display attributes. some elements by default block, display block, like the div, the divs, they are display block. The li, the list, they are also display block. So you have to change the attribute to inline display inline block so that they can be horizontal to each other. So in this code, these ones we already know. So what I want to focus is this part. So in this menu, we have menu 1 is display, the display is block, and menu 2, the display is inline, so that you can see the difference. So you see that with the menu 1, the first menu, the lists are going to be vertical because each of them will take the entire space. So they are going to be vertical. And for the inline one, it's going to be horizontal because each of them will be adjacent to each other. So if you run this code, so like they say C is believing, I'm going to copy this code so we can run it to show it to you. Okay, so I'm going to name it index.html. Okay, so let's run it and see. So let me run it with Mozilla so we can see. Okay, so as you can see, all are vertical. This is the entire space. The other one takes the entire space. The third one takes the entire space. The fourth one takes the entire space. But the second one, because it has attribute of this inline, inline block, they are adjacent to each other because now they will all be horizontal to each other. So that's the difference we have for the list. But I'm going to do another example for a div so that you can also see the effect. Now, if you are on Kuulchat.com, on Kuulchat.com, you can see a list of items which are next to each other. So you can also use the inline block to accomplish that. You can use the inline block to accomplish that as well. So I will show it to you then, even though it's not in the lecture content, because this is live. I'm going to do for you to see that as the menus, we can use them on the. Okay, so for example, and this bullet, I'll zoom it so I'll take it back to the 100%. Okay, so this bullet, all this, so that they are next to each other. So it could also be done with the inline block. So all these things could be it could be, if it's a link, they could all be given that display inline block attributes so that they can all be next to each other, and you can set a margin around them, margin right and margin bottom, so that there will be spaces around them. Okay, and another usefulness of this is also if you are designing a shopping e-commerce site, the products normally we leave the spaces around them and we display them inline. Then if it gets to the next line, then they continue at the bottom. Okay, so use the same concept for the display inline. So let's say, for example, if we have, I'll write a class I'll call item. Okay, so this item will have display inline block. Okay. So this I'm going to call display inline block. Now with the display inline block too, normally if they are not of the same height, then you can see that one of them may be at the lower side. So normally we make them vertical align top so that they all be at the start at the top. So you can set the vertical align also to the top for the inline display, inline block display. Okay, so now I'm going to make the background a little bit gray so that I'll make the body have a background which is a little, then the display item I'll make them white. So body background. Okay, so I'll give the color F5, F5, F5. Okay, later on you will see the color code also in this same tutorials. We'll talk about the color code. Okay, so this is a color code for a little bit gray background. So here I'm going to call my item. So I'll write a number of divs. Like we said, by default, divs are so item. Okay. By default, divs are display blocks, so they cover the entire space. So let me first of all, I will not call this class so that you can see how they will be displayed. And I call the class on the item 1. So this one will be item 1. So the background of our this thing is supposed to be white. So background is white. So white color code is also either 3F or 6Fs. Okay. Then we have a margin right of, let's say, 20. So margin right, let's say 20 pixels. The margin bottom also 20 pixels. Okay. So now we have item 1, we have item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5. Okay. Now if I run this, okay, as you can see they are all vertical because this one will take the entire space, that one will also take the entire space, that div will also take the entire space, this div will also take the entire space, this div will also take the entire space. Okay, so now if I call the display inline block, then they will all be aligned in line with each other. Now we also need to give a width for our div so that you can save enough space. Now ideally, if you are doing inline divs with inlines, it's advisable to use percentage so that it will be adaptable to the screen size. So if the screen size is being reduced, they will be adapting to the size. So this one we can make it a width of maybe 32%. Okay, so each of them can have a width of 32%. So 32% means we can have 3 items, approximately 3 items, but each will take 30 by the width. The entire screen is 100%. So if you are dividing it by 32, if you are giving each by 32, then I think 3 will cover the space. Then the subsequent one will go on the next line. Okay, so we are going to call this class the item class on this. So we have item. Okay, so now when I run it, okay, so it's not like the percentage is small, so you know how to debug with the Mozilla. So Control F12 will show you the code. Then you can click on it. You can click on it and change until you get everything done. Then you go to the code and go and change it. So when you go over here, it gives you the possibility to select the elements. So when you select elements, then you can change. So let me change it to maybe 31. Okay, so 31 is okay. You can see that all the three are on one line, then the subsequent ones are below them. Okay, so that is how you do those inline divs. Normally we use this if you want to divide a page into a section where you can write one thing at one side, then the other at another side. So for example, if I want to divide my page into three, I can just have three divs which are inline to each other. So I can write in this div, I can write in that div, and I can write in that div. If you want to divide your page into two, you can have two divs, one next to each other. And you can write your content over here, and you can write your content over there. So if, like in the Kuulchat page, you see that they have images and text inside. So in that one, you decide the content, what goes into the display inline content. So the content that goes here, you decide it. If you want to give it the item also a padding, then you can also give it a padding. So based on what you are doing and the style you will use, that's why we learned all the styles. So you need to master them. So based on what you want to do and the style that you will call. So here, if I give it a padding, okay, if I have given it a padding, okay, now when we change it to 31, so let's change it back to 31. Let's see if all the three will be on one line. Okay, so because we give the padding, it affected the width of it. So we can change it again. Let's see. Okay, so it means all should be 30%. So we can have 30%. Okay. Now later on, we will also talk about this one is having a margin right over here at the last end. So that's why it's also affecting our width. So later on, when we come to the nth chart, we will see an example where we can remove the margin right from the every third item. So like this will be the third one, which is on the end of our page. It will give it a margin right of 0. Then the sixth one will also give it a margin right of 0, and so on. So later on we'll also see how you can do that. So when you give the ones at the end margin right, it gives you more space that you can increase your display inline block items. Okay, so basically that's it. So in week 4, you will see an example of a page you need to design. So I believe this concept is okay. So I will go over because it's very important. So by default, divs they cover the entire space. List also covers the entire space. So if you are writing a menu and you want them to be inline to each other, you need to give it the attributes display inline block so that they can be inline to each other. The same thing with a div. Div takes the entire space. So if you want one div to be next to each other, or if you are creating a web page and you want it one to be next to each other so that you can put in content, then you can also give the div, a display inline block, so that those divs will be next to each other. Then you can put the content inside. And in this example, we were placing a list of divs inline to each other. So we give the attribute display inline block. Now, sometimes when the content of your divs which you display inline are not of the same height, one will be at the bottom, then the other one will be, those which are shorter will be pushed to the bottom. So if you want them to all to start from the top, then you have to give the vertical align to be top. So this one makes it all of them to start at the top. Then this is the background white. We decided to give it a background white, and we decided to give the body a little gray background. Then our margin right, so all our divs which are displayed inline, they will have a margin right of 20 pixels. Then they have a margin bottom of 20 pixels, so that those below them can also have some space. Then we give it a width of 30%. So 30%, the entire screen is 100%, so at least 3 will go on the horizontal space. Then we give it a padding of 10 pixels, so that in the inner space we will have a space of 10 pixels. Okay, so that's it. So we are going to continue. Okay. Okay. Then this is an example of this with display block. So here in this example, it's similar to what we did. So let's copy them. We can run it and see. I will explain some key. So just like the one we did. Okay. But this one, we didn't use a class. It has been written directly. Okay. So here, the div has been given background yellow. Then the display is this one is display block. So a height of 20 pixels. This one is also display block, height of 20 pixels. Okay, but these ones are display inline to each other. So as I've already explained to you, you can even guess that this one, because it's display block, it will cover the entire horizontal space. This one too, because it's display block, it will cover the entire horizontal space. But this and this, because they are inline block, okay, they will be next to each other. So far as their width doesn't take the entire space. So if you are arranging divs next to each other, make sure that when you combine their width, it's not more than 100%. And the other one will move to the next line. Because if you combine all their width, you are using percentages. It must it shouldn't be more than the 100%. So with this one and this one, they will be next to each other. So when we refresh our page, okay, so as you can see, this one and this one, because display block, we took the entire space. This and this are inline to each other because we gave it display inline block. So in your web page, if you want to write a content here, you can do that. If you want to write a content here, you can do that. Okay. Now remember, I gave the div a height, because if you don't give it a height, if you haven't put anything in the content, you not see the div because there's nothing inside. So if you want to use a div which you need it to cover the space but it doesn't have any content, then you have to give it a height, and that you not see the effect of that div. So that's why I give this one's height. Okay, so let's take for example, this one is a web page. So this web page, you want to have two content to write inside. So it's just that. So if I delete this one, okay. So let's say you have a page where, so let's say my page this is the page, the entire div, and I want to divide that div into two. Okay. So I decided to divide this div into two. So I can type whatever I want in each of them. So this is the first div. It's open here and closes there. So I can type. So I can type anything. So my left content comes here. So you write your HTML code inside this left content, this div. Okay, so based on what you are doing by writing the images, text, and everything, will all be in the left. Then the one that you want it to be in the right, then you put its content inside here. So the right content comes here. Okay, so you can style it how you want it. So based on what you are doing, how you want to design your page, the left and the right inline divs, you can style it the way you want it. So later on we'll see how you can give it a border, a radius, and the rest. So this week we'll also consider bases. So if I run this, okay, so if you have a page, not necessarily it's just that's why I'm using the background of yellow and this. So if there is nothing, no background there, so the content, there will be the left a div at the left hand side that contains some content. Then there will be a div at the right hand side that contains some content. So these divs are placed next to each other because of the display inline property. So, and so far as the width of them are not more than 100%, then they will all be next to each other. Now, if I increase one of the div, let's say 60, if you add 60 to 48, it's more than 100. So you see that the second one will drop. So if I increase this one a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, it has dropped to the next line. It's no longer inline because there is not enough space for it to be inline to each other. So if you are given the width, make sure that if you combine all the width, it's not more than 100%. Okay. So you want a little bit space, you can also do the adjustment as well. And also if you want floats to the right so that there will be a little space too, you can also float them to the right. Okay, by default divs are floated at the left. So the one that you also want to push it to the right hand side, then you can give an attribute float to the right. Okay, so the floating push the distance to the position where you want it to be. So you either float to the left or right. But this one, we want it to float to the right, and this one this one is already at the left, so that we'll have enough space over here. Okay, so you can do that as well. So that's it for display inline for divs. Now we are on position property. So position, most often when you are writing a code, you want to fix some div so that it doesn't move, it remains on the where it is. So if people are scrolling, it will still be there. For example, when you are using some pages, you see that the header, you know what we refer to as header and footer. So the header is what we have at the top. Normally we have the home and other menus are at the top. Those ones are called headers. And the ones we have at the bottom are called footers. Okay, so normally headers in most websites, they fix the header so that while you are scrolling, the header will still remain there so that you can have the menus to click. Even so, you don't need to scroll to the top before you can see the menus to navigate. So when you are at the middle of the page, you can still see the menus and click and navigate to another page. So those ones are those ones. Then we also have the ones that you also fix them relative to a particular div. So If you are, for example, you also consider if you want to put a text on an image, you need all this the position so that you know where you want to put the text over the image. This we will also see. So position properties specify the type of position method used for an element. There are 5 different position values. So you can have position static, you can have position relative, you can have position fixed, you can have position absolute, and you can have position sticky. Okay, so we'll consider all of these. So by default, elements are static. Okay, so you not see any much effect because all the elements you write are already static. So static position elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, right properties. So for static, you can't position them to the top or bottom or left or right. So if you write top and you give it a value, you write right and you give it a value, you write bottom and you want to position it to a particular position, then you should know that it will not have effect to the static property. So an element with position static is positioned in any special way. It's always positioned according to the normal flow of the page. So by the element that you write, it's according to the order of the page. So if you have the first div, div 1, div 2, div 3, all with a display block, and then div 1 will be at the top, div 2 will be follow it, div 3 will follow it, and so on. So they are all static properties. So they follow the flow of the page. But for this fixed, absolute, and the rest, they don't care whether they were placed at the bottom. If you decide to put them at the top, even if you go and put the elements at the bottom, they will still be at where you want them to be relative to the screen. Okay, so here is what we have the left. Okay, here we have left, then we have the right, then we have the top, then we have the bottom. So based on where you want to position your div, for the other ones which we will consider, you can position them wherever you want it. So if I want to position an element here, even if on my code, that's the last element I wrote in my code, in my HTML code, since I decide to put it here, it will remain there. But for static, it follows the order in which you place your element. So those who are those divs which are static, it follows the order in which you place the element. Okay. So in this example, you will not see any much effect in it because the divs are position static, so it will flow next to each other. So I can just copy, then you can see what we are talking about. So you can have okay. So this is static. I have a second one. Okay. So this one and this one, they follow the flow. So if you have third one, it will follow below it. If you have fourth one, it follows below it. But for the other positions like absolute and fixed, even though you can write it as the last thing, even though maybe that's the last element you write, so far as you say it should be at this side, it doesn't matter where you place it in your code, it goes there. Okay, so that's the difference between the static and the other ones. So by default, the pages are static. So the position attribute for the elements are static. So if you decide to position them to the left or to the right or to the bottom or to the top, all those positions you want to specify, then you use any of the positions which we are going to discuss in the subsequent content. So we are now on position relative. As the name even implies, relative means as compared to something. So as compared to something, so relative to. Okay, so in the relative positions, you specify the top or the left or the right. So you specify where it will be positioned. So an element with position relative is position relative to its normal position. So relative to its normal position, setting the top, right, bottom, and left properties of a relative position element will cause it to be adjusted away from its normal position. So away from its normal position, you can, based on what you specify, it will be adjusted to that position. So other content will not be adjusted to fit into any gap left by the element. So if other content will not be adjusted, so even if there is an element there and you put it there, it may cover that element. So that element will go under it. So you will not see that element. Okay, so other static elements will. So later on, we will see that if an element is on top of another element, how are you going to do so that the one that you decide to be at the top will override the other one. So that one, we'll talk about it later. Okay, but with the relative, even if there's an element already there, so far as you specify that that's where it will go, it will move to that position. Okay, so we'll take this example. So here we have this class we call relative, which has this property. So we have position, we've given it a relative, and the left, we've given it 30 pixels, and the top, we've given it 40 pixels, and given it this border so that you can see the effect. Okay, so instead of it to start from zero, which instead of it to start somewhere here, we said at the left position we want to place it 30 pixels. So from the left side it's supposed to be 30. Then from the top, the top side, we want it to be placed for 400 pixels. Okay. Then we set this border so that you can see the effect. So we copy and I run it so you can see. Okay, so as you can see, okay, so we said it should be positioned at 400. So we said it should be positioned at 400 pixels from the. So from here to here, it's 400 pixels. So that's where it has been positioned. So the normal position will start from somewhere here. I think the div was after this element. So in the normal position, in the normal case, it's supposed to be right after this element. So it's supposed to be right after you have your h, after this text. You know, normal circumstance is supposed to be right there. Okay, but because we've given it a relative position property, which is relative, we specify that from the top, from its normal position, it should be away 400 pixels. And then the left, we say it should also be away 30 pixels. Okay, so from here to here, you say it should be away 30 pixels. So if you want it to be adjusted a little bit, you can increase the left to based on the way you want it to adjust. Okay, so now we can use a debugging. So F12. So F12. Then we can be adjusting the class so that it effect. Okay, so when we click on this div, we have the class. So if I want to reduce the top value, so I can just decrease it. Okay, so maybe I want it from the 0 position to 200 before it should be displayed. Okay, so as you can see, it is now moving. Okay, so if I want to increase this one to the left, then it can be, you see that it's moving from, you can see that it's moving left. This I'm indicating. Okay, so I'm moving it from its normal position this amount of pixels that I decide. So if I say it should remove 70 pixels, so as we move, then it's moving away from its position. Okay, it's moving away from its position. Okay, so remember that the width is still the same, just that you are moving it. So as we can see, it's overflowing to the other side. Okay, so when you are positioning them to you also take note so that you don't overflow your content. So that's it for relative. Then we continue. Okay, so relative, you give position relative. Then the normal start from 0, the left 0, so right also 0, bottom also 0 based on. So each of those adjustments that we talk about, it's all 0, 0, 0. So if you want it to be away from its normal position, then you specify. So away from the left normal position, the amount you want to specify. Away from the normal top position, the amount you want to specify. Away from the normal right position, the amount you want, then you specify. In the bottom position, the amount you want, then you specify in that order. Okay, so this border, we will also talk about it, this border attribute. But this border is just to make a border around it so that you can see its effect. Okay, then we're on the position fix. Okay, then this is where you also must also look at very carefully. So the fixed position, for them, they don't bother, just like the other ones. If there is another element there, so far as you said they should be there and they shouldn't move. Fixed means it's fixed, so it will always be there. So that's a fix. So for fixed position, you need to specify the top, the left, the bottom, and where you want to position it. You need to specify them. Then you can also give it a width. You can also give it a width. Now, remember, with the fixed position, if there is a content at where you want to place it, it will cover that content. So you have to make a way to make that content that it is covering visible. If it is a must, that content must be visible. So I'm going to copy this one, then you can see the effect. Okay. Okay. So here we said top is 0, so it means at the top side is supposed to be starting from 0. Left is 0, so at the left side is starting from 0. Bottom is 0, so at the bottom side starting from 0. Right is 0, so and the width is 300 pixels. And the background is this color, and the border color around it is this color. So when we run this code, okay, so as you can see, we said bottom is 0, so it will stick at this bottom. So bottom is 0, so away from the bottom is 0, away from the left too is 0, away from the top is also 0. Then the right, even though we make it 0, because we've given it a width of 300, it will come here. So okay, so if you decide not to give it a width, then it will cover the entire space, because we say away from 0 is 0, away from the bottom is 0, away from the left is 0, away from the right is 0. So it covers the entire screen. That's what you want. Okay, so but if you want it to cover to a certain stage, okay, in this week assignment, you are supposed to make a div which will cover about 30%. So for example, if you go to youtube.com, the left hand side, of their page is fixed. So no matter how you are moving, that page doesn't move because it's fixed. That's also that property. To have a feature or your design, if you want a feature like that, then you must as well have that attribute. So in the assignment, the left hand side of the YouTube page is fixed, and it's also fixed. So you are supposed to design you are supposed to design a page like that. So in that case, given the width of 300 pixels, you can as well write your width in percentage. So this one can be maybe 30% or something. Okay, so you can as well give it a 30%, or anyhow you want it. So the percentage you want. So if this is enough for you, then you can give it a width of pixels or percentage. The advantage of giving it in percentage is that it adapts to the screen, because percentage dimension is relative to the screen. So if the screen is adjusted, if the screen is being adjusted, it will also be as you can see. But if you fix it, irrespective of the dimension of it, it will remain the same. So that's why also we give elements that we want to be adaptable in percentages. Okay, so in the example, this side of your is supposed to be fixed. So you give it a then now to illustrate to you, the any tab here will be covered. So let's say for example, okay, how do you call it? I think even okay. So I don't need to even give an example. This one. So position fix is a test, but because this one covers the position where it is, you can see that when we are viewing the page, we can't see it. Position fix, we can't see that test because our fix this thing has covered. That test is there. That is a test. It is over there, as you can see. It is showing that there is a test there, but we can't see it because our fix covered it. So if you are using fixed div, you make sure that the other elements it is covering, you make room for them. So either you give it a margin to push it away from your div elements, or as we will see in the subsequent content, you can also give another div which is empty, so that it will push the ones which have been hidden to the appropriate position that will make them visible. So based on what you are doing, how you can accomplish that, your fixed element where they are covering the element they are covering, you just have to push them either by giving margin left, margin right, or using another div and give it a height or a width, so that push the ones you want them to be visible. Okay, so on the YouTube page, this side of the page is fixed. So if you are scrolling, it doesn't move, and the top is also fixed. Okay? So for your assignment, you make a div that the top is fixed, and at the left hand side too is fixed. So as you can see, if I'm scrolling this page, only this part moves. The ones which are fixed doesn't move. Okay, this one doesn't move. As you can see, the top where we have the search and the menus, sign in, and they are all fixed, and the left are also fixed. Okay, so you can do that. So you just have to have two divs, one that you position them. So here your left will be 0, then you give the width you want it to cover. Okay, then your bottom will also be 0. So once your bottom 0 to be here, your left is 0 to be here, then you give it to cover position where you want. So that will take care of this side. and position fixed will make it fixed, irrespective of the movement. Then for the top two, from here to here, you make the left 0, top 0, then the right also, because the right is from here, so right also 0. Then you give the width, the height that you want. So if the height you want for this one, then you give it a height, so it will take it will cover that space. Then any other ones will in the example, if there is no div which has pushed this one to be somewhere at the beginning, okay, so in that's why I'm advising that. So you make room for another. You either start the div which it has been covered to have a margin top or margin left or margin right, or however you want to do it. Okay, so in our next lesson we'll see an example where the header, so like I give the caution, so where the header has covered the content of the page, so you need to make room to push the content downward. So to make room, you need to create a different div and give it a height. That div doesn't contain anything, but it will be the one rather that the fixed div is going to cover. Then the other ones will be pushed to the bottom. So in this example, which we are going to run, oh, how is this thing going to these things can be annoying sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to explain it. So this is similar to what we did. So Kuulchat, whatever. A class called header. In this class, it is fixed at the top. So at the top, it has this background. So it has this color background. Okay. Then it is position is fixed and it is 100. It covers the horizontal space. Okay. Now later on we'll see the use of the Z index. Okay. Later on we'll see the use of the index, so I don't need to talk about it. But what I want to emphasize is that we have position fixed. So the position fixed will make it fixed at the top. And we have width of 100%. So once it is 100%, it takes the entire space of it. Then we have our list, our menus. So this one you should already know the menu. So we have the menus. We don't want the bullet item, so we make list star none. Then our menu items, the list, we make it display inline so that they will be next to each other. Then the menu link, we give it a display block so that it covers the entire space of the list. And if you don't give it display block, you cannot padding it. Certain inline cannot have certain padding, so you have to make your link on your display block so that you can padding it the way you want it. So we are able to padding it to the way we want it to have an inner space. Okay. Then we have a logo box. So the logo box is where the logo will be displayed inline to where our menu will be. So our div where it will be inline with our menu is what we call it, is the class we've created called logo box. So here you can see that the display is inline. Okay, so like I have been saying, that everything you are going to learn, we are applying them in the subsequent week. So make sure that you are clear. So even if you have to watch the video as many times to make it fully, that you fully covered everything, then you should be able to do that. Okay, so our logo box is a div that we are going to display it next to our menu box. So our menu box, as you can see, is also displayed inline. So these two divs are going to be next to each other. That's why we gave them display inline block. And this div, we are going to put our logo inside. And this div, we are going to put our menu inside. Then we have a div we call container. So this div will center our div in the center of our page. So like we've seen in the previous the previous week, we said if you want to center a div, you will give it a width which is less than 100%. Then you give margin left to be auto and margin right. Then that div will be centered in the middle. So we want our content for our menus and our logo side to be positioned at the center with this width. Okay, so that's why we have it. But our header will take the entire space. So this is the header. It will take the entire space and it is fixed. Then we have the container which centers our div with 120 or 1200 pixels. Then next to each other we have the logo box. They are inline to each other, and the logo box we put our logo inside. So our image link, Kuulchat image link, so that's the URL for the Kuulchat logo. Okay, then the menu box we put our menu inside. So our URL, that's the class we created for our menu. So the list we said they should be inline to each other, so they will all be inline to each other. And our link, we give them to have a padding, so each of the link will have some padding around them. And they are all display block. Okay, so now what we want to emphasize is this page content. Now if I display the page, you will not see this part of the page because it will be covered by our header because it is fixed, so it will cover it. So Kuulchat is an educational resource portal for people of all walks of life. You will not see it. You can learn or socialize on the site. You will not see that part because our fixed header will cover that side. So we will run it, then you can see it. Then we'll see how we can resolve it. We will see how we can resolve it. Okay. Okay, I haven't saved it. Okay, so I will run and we can see. We will see how. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, it has covered, this header has covered the content. So if we are displayed to you, you can see that they are all there, but they are not visible because our header files has covered them. Okay, so in order for you to make them come to the bottom, you need a div that you give it a height. So immediately after this, you give the div a height which will be reasonable enough to cover that space, to push what is being covered by this one to the bottom. Okay, so we will create. So in the next code, or we can modify the code. In the code, you create a div we are going to call push. So in this div, we'll give it height, a reasonable amount of height that one rather will be covered our header, and it will push the other element, which is our page content, to the bottom. Okay, so we will write our class over here. Okay, so we call our class push. So it pushes the content. So we give it a height of let's say 40 pixels. If it is small or more, we can adjust it using the debugging feature. So in this push, in this push, we will call it right after our header file. So it will be that one rather will be covered by our header. And because it has no content, even if it's being covered by our header, we don't bother because it doesn't have any content. But it will push the other elements which are static as the static property. So this one rather will be covered by our header file, and this one, since the where this position will be at that time, the header was no longer there, then this one will be visible. Okay, so have I said? Okay, so if I refresh it, okay, so as you can see now, you can over there. So the push is over here. So if I click on the push, so if I click on the push element, you see that the push, okay, so you can see that the push is there. So as you can see, it's showing that the push is there, but it has been covered by the header. So because we don't have any content in it, we don't bother. But the ones that we have the content is the one that we want them to show. So that's why we put the push div there, so that it will rather make the ones that we want it to be visible to come to the after it, and that one will be hidden by the our header. Okay. So in the YouTube example, base height that you set for this one, you can also have a push div. So before this content will come, that push div will be there, which will give the reasonable height. So it will be covered by this part of your page. So it will be covered by this part of your page. Then these ones which are supposed to show will be visible. Okay. Then with the one with your left hand side too, you can also make room for it, so that you can also have a push for the left. Okay, but you can make this one also, you can also make another position which is also fixed somewhere here, but its content will be the ones that will be moving. So based on how you want to do it, so you just have to be creative. So you just picture the page in your mind. The main concept is that the top one is supposed to be fixed and the left one is going to be fixed. But you know that the fixed ones, they cover any other element that are in their position. So you have to make room to either give it a star, a margin, or something that to make it move away from where your fixed divs are. Okay, so we continue. So I've explained already. Okay, so we are now on position absolute. So position absolute. So an element with position absolute is position relative to the nearest position ancestor instead of position relative to the viewport, like fix. So for fix, it is relative to the viewport, the screen, relative to the screen for the fix. So the positions you put for the fix, left, bottom, right, bottom, and the rest, all of them, top, bottom, all of them, they are for the fix is relative to the viewpoint, the screen. But with the absolute, is relative to the parent. So the parent container in which it is, the position, top, left, and all of things relative to where the parent is. So where the parent element is. So that's the difference between fixed and absolute. So absolute is also fixed, but unlike the fixed, the absolute left, top, right, and bottom is relative to the parent container in which it is. But for the fixed, the positions are relative to the screen. So for the fixed, they are relative to the screen, but for the absolute, it's relative to the parent container in which it is. So to even use an absolute div, you need to make the parent have a relative position relative. So you need to position the parent relative. Other than that, it will be using the screen has a relative position. So if you want to make an absolute div in the parent, make sure that the parent element also have a position relative, so that your absolute will. So for the absolute, like I've explained, it takes position of the parent. So make sure that the parent has a position relative. So we'll take this example. So in this example, this is the parent div. So as you can see, it has position relative, and it has width 400 pixels, and the height is 200 pixels border. And we have an absolute div, which will be in the parent, and that one, the position is absolute. The top is 20 pixels, and the left is 0. So from the top, I will leave a space of 20 pixels will be left before the div comes. Then for the width, it's going to be 200 pixels, and the height is going to be 100 pixels, and we have a border of 3 pixels. So I'm going to copy this, and we will see its outcome. Okay, so here, this is the parent container, so that is a relative, and this is our absolute div. So relative to where the parent is where our fixed div is going to be. Unlike the other one where it starts from the 0 position relative to the screen, here with the absolute, the parent side will come. So in the parent side, we have our search box. Okay, so this is just to demonstrate to you how search box are normally implemented, where the results will cover the page, the values which were already there. Okay, so the result container normally is being named as absolute. So it will just it will cover any other text which is over there, and those texts will go below because it's also fixed, but that one is fixed relative to the parent position where it is. Okay, so this is just a text box where, for example, this is just an illustration to demonstrate to you how the search results are. So those of you who doing the web application development, you will see an example when we are developing an application where there's a possibility to search for maybe an item, then this will be handy. So we'll have our search box, and we have our results, which is going to be absolute. It will have an absolute star. Now I refresh our page. Okay, so I can see this is a parent div. This is a parent div, and we have our text box over here, and this is where we put our results. Okay, so it's just to demonstrate to you, for instance, assuming someone is searching. So in a normal development, this div will not be shown. So it's only when the result is fetched from the database or wherever the result is being fetched from. When the result comes, then this div will be shown with the result inserted into it. Okay, so this is just an example. So this div is fixed relative to this parent. So we said from the top it should be 20 pixels. So from the parent boundary is 0 is over here. So top left 0 and top 0 is here. Left 0 is here. Okay, right 0 is here, and bottom is over here. Okay, so in the star, in this star, we said relative to the parent, it should be 20 pixels away from the parent. So from here to here is 20 pixels. So if I increase this one a little bit, you can see that it will be moving downward. Okay. So based on what you are doing and how you want the way to be positioned relative to the top. Okay. And the left, relative to the parent, we say it's 0, so it's going to be here. The left is 0 position over here. And we give it a width of 200 pixels and a height of 100 pixels and a boundary of this. So in the normal circumstance, this will have a display none. Okay, so display none means that it shouldn't be displayed at all. So this will have a display none. So in the normal circumstance, with the search example, this will have a display none. So when the user start typing, maybe I type Kuulchat. So if there is a result for Kuulchat, when the result comes, then this will be given a display block. So it will be given a style of display block. Then the result will be shown in our absolute div. Okay, then the list of result will show. So here, as you can see, there are tests below the absolute, but because it's absolute, it has covered the test. Okay, now you can see it. If I give this a background, absolute a background of white, you can see that the text below them, you will not even see most of them because it will no longer be transparent. So background of white. Okay, as you can see, it has covered them. Okay, so that's how normally the search box are done. So in the search box, we have an input text. Then we have a div, an absolute div, which is relative to our parent div. Then we leave a top margin so that it will cover for the input text that will be over there. Then if you want to position it left 0 of your left, then it's good to have a left of 0. Okay, then top you leave a little bit space based on your input text. Okay. Then if you are using it for a search result, by default, you give it a style of none. So when the result comes, then give it a display of block so that it becomes visible. Then in that div, you put in your content, so it will be displayed as a result. Then if the person clicks on it, if you want something to happen, then it happens. Okay, but for now, what we want to emphasize is that this one is absolute. So like we explained, those position divs, they normally cover the text which are below them, because irrespective of if the text is there or not, they don't bother for them. So far as you said this is where they should be, they will be positioned there. Now the difference between fixed positioning and absolute position is that absolute is relative to the parent. So here the position is relative to the parent, this parent. While for fixed, it's relative to the screen. So for fixed, we have our left here, okay, our top here, our right over there, okay. But for absolute, because this is our parent, our left is over here, our top is over here, our right is here, our bottom is over here. Okay, so that is the difference. So for absolute, it's relative to the parent. Now, if I take off the relative property of the parent, you can see where my absolute lesson is, because now it's seeing my body. That's a screen, has a relative position. So like you see here now, here is having 20, top of 20, and left 0, and the width 200. Okay, so make sure if you are using an absolute div, make sure that the parent div or element has a display of a position of relative. So it should have a position of relative. Other than that, your absolute div will be positioned based on the viewport. Okay, so that's the difference. So if you ask what's the difference between fixed and absolute div, you should be able to explain. They are both fixed. The difference is that fixed is related to the viewport relative to the screen. But for absolute, it's related to the parent container in which it is. And the parent container must also be given the position relative, so that the absolute div can be positioned to that dimension, and that it will take the relative to the screen or the body of your page. Okay, so I believe it's clear. So we will continue. Then sticky. And what is sticky? To stick. Sticky is to stick. Or is it not? Or isn't it? So it's a layman English. To stick. Sticky. To stick. Okay. So for sticky, it's also like fixed, but it's not fixed until it gets to that position. So until it gets onto the scrolling. So when you are scrolling, it will not be fixed. So any other element at the top will be moving away until the div which has been given the sticky property gets to that height. When it gets to that height, then from that onward, that div will be fixed on the screen. Okay, so this property is handy for adverts. For example, some adverts, if you don't want it to be scrolled far away in the bottom, so it will be given a sticky property, so that if you scroll and they get to their position, then it will be fixed over there, so it doesn't get away from the screen. Okay, so that's how we normally have the sticky. So if you want to have that concept or that feature on your website, then the property you need is a sticky. Okay, so we are going to copy and paste this code. Okay, I forgot to zoom it. Forgive me now. I believe you can at least manage with the small test. So I'm going to copy and paste here, then I explain. Okay, so this is a sticky. So I am sticky. Okay, so this text will be scrolling, will be moving. Then when we get to I am sticky, then it will be fixed over there. So even though when you are scrolling bottom, it will still be there. So we run our sticky example. Okay, so as you can see, this is where it is. So it is over there. Okay, so you can see it is moving. Now when we get to its position, you can see that it's fixed over there. So when you get to its position, it's fixed. When we move away from that place, it's no longer fixed there. So when we get to its position, it is fixed over there. So normally, if there is something that you don't want it to disappear from the screen, so you can make it stick. So when it's being scrolled to that position, it's being fixed at where it is. Okay, so it's just position property is sticky. Then you give it a top. So if you want it to be a little bit away, here at the position, the top is 0. So if you want it to be fixed with some little top, then you can increase the top positions. So when it is fixed, then you will have that top margin as you want it. Okay, but if you want it to be fixed right at top of 0, then you give it a top of 0. Okay, so that's the sticky. So for sticky, when you scroll and you get to where it is sticky, its height, when you scroll and you get to its height, then it will be fixed over there. So in this example, the sticky element stick to the top of the page, top 0. So if you want it to be adjusted, then you can increase the top when you reach its scroll position. So when you scroll and you get to its position, then it's fixed. So that's what the sticky is about. So if most often it's being used for advert place. So maybe you want to put an advert in this container. So when it's being scrolled and it gets to that, it remains. So the advert will still be visible, but other content will be scrolling, other content will be moving away, but that div remains there. So that div won't be on the screen. Okay, so that's basically what the sticky is about. So you give it a position sticky. So when you get to that point, it remains on the screen when we scroll to its point. Okay, so that's it for position. Then we are overlapping elements. So like I have explained to you, with the positions, because you specify where they should be placed, there may be some content over there. Okay, but because you force those elements to be placed over there, they cover the content there. Okay, so if you want one to be shown over the other one, then we use what we call the Z index property. So the higher the Z index, then the element with higher Z index will be at the top. So the lower, then will be below the element. So if there are two elements, which one is on top of the other, if you want the one below to be shown, then you need to give the one below a higher Z index value. So Z index values are integers. So start from some have 0, some have 1, and 2, and the rest. But the concept is that the higher the Z index, the more visible it is to the other layers it has overlap with. So if you are checking the code and you see Z index, that's what it means. Okay, so we are going to take an example where we have position absolutes of an image. Okay, then we have Z index of negative. Okay, so we can ask a Z index of negative. So the concept is that the higher it is, that is the one that goes to the lower, then goes below. So we have Z index of our image to be -1, and it is absolute. So it means that the image, since it's absolute, the image will remain there. Okay, now there is a content already before the image will be placed in the absolute position. So the content, the image will be on top of the content. Okay, so if you don't want the image to be on top of the content, then we need to give the image a lower Z index so that the text will show in front of it. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to copy this. Okay. Okay. So in this example, it uses the images banner. Okay. So if you don't want to download the image, then you can just use a URL from the site. But remember, if you are using a URL, you need to have internet connection. Okay. So the URL was given here, so you can download the image, or you can just right-click it and save as. So however you want to do it. So you can right-click it and save as. Then you can go to the directory where you want to save your image. Okay. So I'll save it in the folder where I have the web design. Okay, in this folder, down with 3. So with 3. Okay. I need the images folder. So I create a new images folder. Images. Okay. So inside the images folder, I'll put the banner image. Okay, so inside the images folder, I've now put the image there. So if you don't want to download, you can use a URL directly. So you can just copy the URL and put it at the SRL of the image. But if you want to save it too, you can save it under your images of your root folder. So in this one, I've saved it there, so I can refresh my page. Okay, so as you can see, that's the image. So if I remove the Z index of the image, you see the effect. So I'm going to uncheck the Z index. Okay, so as you can see, the text is no longer there because the image is absolute. The image is absolute. So since the image is absolute, any other text it will cover that the position where you said it should be. It will cover it. So if you don't want it to be covered and you want the other text to be shown, then you need to give the Z index lower than. By default, elements have a Z index of I think 0 or 1. So if you want the other ones to be below it, then you need to give it a negative value. So that's it for. So with this example, our text, our default element will have a Z index which is more than the image Z index. So they are going to be shown. Those things are going to be shown. Things are frozen because of the recording. It freezes. Okay, so we continue. Okay, so as you can see, the tests are override because our image has a Z index. Now take note that our absolute distance is relative to the body. So our parent is the body tag. If we were supposed to put it in a div, so then we have to set that div to have a position relative so that the absolute div or absolute element will be positioned relative to it. So we continue. So that's it. So one element has overlapped the other one. The one that you want to be at the top, you have to give it a higher Z index. The one that you want it to be below it, then you give it a lower Z index. So later on, I think next week, subsequent week, we will see an example with our header example when we introduce slide. Now, we need to give our header a Z index higher than the Z index of the slide because we want the header to the slide to move under the fixed header. So we needed to give it a Z index which is lower than our. So we needed to give the header a higher Z index so that that one will be on top of our sliding images which will be scrolled. Okay. Now position text in an image. So to position a text in an image, then you also need to put a div where the elements where you want to place the text, you give them an absolute position. Then the container where the image is placed inside, you give it a position of relative. So if I want to write text over here, if I want to write text on this, the container where or the div where this image is there's a parent div, I have to give the position of relative. Then the places where I want to put my text, and all the contents are going to be, that element are going to be absolute. So for example, if I want my text to be here, I know here is 0, here is the top is also 0. So where the position I want, then here, if I want it to be 20 meters, 20 pixels away from the left, then left is going to be 20 pixels. If I want it to be 20 pixels away from the top, then top is going to be 20 pixels. Then I can write whatever I want in my text and to be displayed over there. Then if I want one also here, here is left, right. So the right will be 0. If you want it to be a little bit away from the right side, then give the right to be maybe 20 pixels or however you want it. If you want it to away from the top a little bit, then give the top also some pixels. Then you can write your text. So your absolute div will be positioned over here. Then with the button tool, so if you want it to be here, so relative to the right, you give the margin, and relative to the bottom, then you also give the position. Then if you want it to be here, here is left, so the away from the left you give the cursor. The away from the bottom you also give it. Then your text can be over here. Now if you want it to be centered, then the centered one, we've seen centered one. With the centered, you can just that you can give a div which will cover the entire space and give the text that the inside of the text align center, then it will center the text inside. Okay, so that's the code. So our parent container where our image will have a position relative. Then our top side where we put the top text there. So top left. So we said it should be 8 pixels away from the top and 16 pixels away from the left. And in the front side it's supposed to be 18 pixels. The right to top right. So the top right at the top, at the right side at the top. So from the top 8 pixels and away from the right 16 pixels. Then bottom left. So bottom left is somewhere here. So at the bottom, away from the bottom 40 pixels and away from the left 16 pixels. And they are all absolute. So absolute relative to our container, which is relative. So the bottom right. So the bottom right to over here. So that one away from the bottom we say 40 pixels, away from the right is 16 pixels. So then we have the centered one. So the centered width is 100%. And from the top, so from here, so that one we give the percentage so that it's related to the top. So it divides the top into 2. So because it's 50%, so at the somewhere here it will be positioned. And then since it's 100%, it will be from here. So here, then when we center the text, then the text will be in the middle. Okay. So from here to here, we give the top of 50% so that it will be centered vertically. Then from here and here, because it's 100% width, when we center the text align center, it will center the text in the middle. Okay. Then our width of our image is 100%. Then opacity is about the transparency of your div or your image. So if you give opacity to an element, it's about the transparency. So if by default it is 1, so when it is lower by the 1, it makes it a little bit lighter. So it becomes a little bit more transparent. So the lower the opacity, the more transparent it is. So we are going to run this example, then you can see all that I've been saying. Okay. Okay. So that's the images. Okay. So if you haven't downloaded, then you should use the URL from the Kuulchat URL that I showed you. If you've downloaded it, it's already here. Okay. So the top left, that's a div with the top left with this container. We position it with giving it the absolute position where we want to position it. Then top right, then we've also positioned where you want it to be positioned. Then top bottom, we also position where. Then the center, we also position where we want it to be. So when we run this, okay. So as you can see, that is it. Okay. So our container, which is relative, our container, this is relative. You can see that if I uncheck the relative, then it will be relative to the body, the screen. So that's why your parents, make sure that all the parents that you have, they should be relative, the position relative. As you can see, the bottom and the rest are now relative to our screen. So make sure that the parent container are always given a position relative. It's very, very important. Anything which is important, you can see that I've been saying it several times because of the experience I've acquired. because I know those mistakes I've been doing before I came to realize all these things. That's why I've been repeating certain things. So for parents, if you want to use an absolute div, make sure that your parents have position relative before you absolute their children that goes inside them and put them at their appropriate position. Okay, so our top left is absolute. The position is, and we give a little space away from the left and top. Here to the position is absolute. Then we give a little bit away from the right. So we give a value for our right. Then away from the top, we also give it a little bit space. Okay. So basically that's it. So we continue. Okay. So applying the CSS and position concept to create simple dashboard page. Okay. So for those of you that may be doing a web development, so in your web development course, you may design an interface where a user have to log in. Then it says a dashboard. And it's not necessarily only web developers, even web designers can also, this can also be handled. For example, the YouTube that you saw, you see that this side is fixed and the top is also fixed. So you should know all these fixed positions and the absolute position. So this is an example of absolute position. And as you can see, we have a search box here, and here it is absolute. So here it can be list of URL, which will be the results that will be shown. Then we have our left over here. Okay. Then here we can also decide to make here also an absolute. Then it will have its content which will be scrolling. Okay. This one by default. So we just pull this one. So we just pull this one away from it. So we give it a right. Then we give it a percentage which is less than the percentage 100, so that it will not come over here. Okay. So I think the code is on the page is below. So that's the code. Okay. So I will code. I hope it will not take much time, but I will code. Whilst I'm coding, then I'll be explaining to you. But the code is also there, so you can also make reference to it. Okay. Because it's just a summary of all the things we've done, I didn't want to just copy and explain. So I'm going to take it step by step in my coding. So we have our left side. Our left side, we said it's supposed to be fixed. Okay, so you also did need this knowledge for your assignment for this week, where you design something like the YouTube, where the left is fixed and the top is fixed. So for the left, which is fixed, our position is supposed to be fixed. Okay. Now from the top, if you want it to be from the top, in this example, it start from the top. Everything is start from the top. But if you want your left side to be somewhere here, and maybe this will be also a top. This will also be top. Then you give a top margin, some little top margin, so that this will be part of the fixed top. Then this will be on its own. So however you want it. So let's assume I don't want to do the YouTube example for it, because if I do it that way, if I do this one fixed and I do this one fixed, then I've already solved this week example for it. So I'm only going to make this one fixed. Okay, so you will do your assignment to make the top fixed. Okay, so in this side, this part, the left side is going to be fixed. So left will be 0. My bottom will also be 0. Then I give it a width of maybe 20%, so that it covers up to this stage. Okay, so my top, I've decided to start it at the top. So top is going to be 0. So I won't leave any space from the top. And I'm not going to leave any space from the left. Then I'm not going to leave any space from the bottom, so bottom is also going to be 0 pixels. Okay, but for the right, because it's not going to cover the entire screen, I don't need the right side, but I need the width. So if I decide to give the width of 20%, okay, and the background, let's say a little bit gray, so F5, F5, F5. Okay, so that is it for this. So I'm going to call that class over here. Okay, so I'm going to call that class. So div class is equal to left. Okay. Okay. So now I refresh my page and let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, it is over here. So that's our left side. So that's our left side. So you can see the little bit grayness on that side. So that's our left side of our page. So we can put our content inside. So most often you have inside it, most often there may be logo or something. So if there is a logo here, I can have my engine SRC. So I can use a Kuulchat logo. So if I'm using a Kuulchat logo, it's kuulchat.com/images/logo.png. Okay, so images.logo.png. Okay, then I can give it a width of maybe 70 pixels. Okay, and normally we need to put this one a link and give it, and the URL will be the page for your home page, so that when the person wants to go back to your home page, it clicks on it. So you can give our logo an image. Okay, then as I've explained in your previous week, if you are using an image in a background, make sure that image is transparent. It's a PNG, so that it blends with the background. Okay, so as you can see, we have our lesson. If you want to center it in the middle, then just center it. So you can create a class which will have text align center. So to have an attribute text align center. We've seen the text align in the previous lesson that we did. So text align center. So I can call it over here so that it will center my. Okay. So this one will center my content of my page. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, I've done this part of the lesson. Then I'm left with this side of my page. Okay. So here I can call it right. So the other side I can call it right. Okay. So if the right right, I can make it position absolute. Okay. Position absolute. Then it starts from the right hand side. So right will be 0. So 0, 0 to then it will be at the bottom too. The bottom will also be 0. Okay. Okay. Then because it will not get to the left hand side, I don't need the top bar. It starts also at the top. So top will also be 0. Because it will not go to the left hand side, it's not going to then I will have to give it a width of 80% so that it comes to join my 20% at the left. So yeah, I have to give it a width of 80%. Okay. Now I'm going to give a background. I'm going to give a background of maybe red so that you can see the effects. Later I'll move it because it's white. Okay, so this is for my left, this is for my right. Okay, so each of the div, you put the content in their corresponding div based on what you are doing. Okay, so as you can see, this is my right hand side and this is my left hand side. So whatever I want to put at the left hand side, I'll go and put it in the left div. And whatever I want to put at my right hand side, I'll go and put it at the right hand side. Now I didn't make the right hand side fixed. Now another difference between the fixed and the absolute is that for the absolute, you can also, when it overflow, it will scroll. So if the content goes beyond this height, for the absolute side, it will be scrolling, but for fixed, it will not scroll. So unless you make it overflow to scroll, before when it goes beyond, then it will scroll. So for the overflow scroll, normally it's been given on hover. So it's given on hover that it is being hovered and it's more than its height, then it will show the scroll button so that it can be scrolled at the bottom. For example, like the YouTube one, you can see that there are things at the, okay, so you can see there are things below it. So when you hover it, then the scroll will show. So you can scroll over there. So we can scroll over there. Okay. But as you can see here, we don't need the scroll because here it is not fixed. Because it's not fixed. So the same thing we've done over here. So here with this side we make absolute and this side fixed. Okay, so here for ours we didn't have a fixed top. So that's your assignment you need to do so that you have a top one. So in your assignment here can be if this is part of the left. Okay, this doesn't seem to be part of the left because it doesn't have any scroll. Okay, so this is part of the top. So from here up to here, so from here up to here, you have a div you call top. So that div will be fixed. Then from here up to the bottom, you have the one you call left, where it's also fixed. Okay. Then the other one, this one can be content. You can call it content. So that one is going to be absolute. So the dimension from here to here, you also make sure you leave it at the top. So the top of this content, if the height of this one is maybe 70 pixels, so at the top of this one, you also make it top 50 pixels, so it will leave that dimension, so that it will start from here. Okay, so this one will not go into here. So here you just make the top of 50 pieces or however you want to make it. So basically, but I'll continue with our. So your assignment, this is your assignment, so I don't want to solve it for you, but it's similar to what I'm doing. So here, my left hand side is here and my right side is over here. So now I'll remove the red background, and I can start just to show you the difference. So here, from here to here is 20%, and from here to here is 80%, and they all make up the 100% work. This is fixed, and this is absolute. And here it takes the top is 0. Okay, so in your YouTube example, if you start from here, then you can leave the top to maybe 50 or 70 pixels so that the top will start from here. So in that case, it will be on its own. From here up to here, it will be on its own. Then you can have another as or top. So that top, the left will be 0. Then the top will also be 0. Then the right will also be 0. Okay, then you just give it a height so that it goes to wherever you want it to go. So that will cover the entire space over here. Now for the remaining one, it's just the same as we have the right. Just the same as we have the right. Just that you have to make room for the top. So if we are using the top, at the top, then you just have to make room, maybe 70 pixels at the top, so that you make room for the top div. Okay, so in this case, then you make room for the top div. So your content div will be over here, and your top div will be over here. So you just make room for your content. You just make room for the top, so that it doesn't go beyond. It should not overlap with your top, which is fixed. Okay, so you try it. If you are not able to do it, you just contact me then. But it's going to be a nice project to do. This is how you acquire your experience. So now we've done it this way. So I'm going to take the background color red, and I'll put in the other content. Okay, so in the other content, so here you can have your URL for maybe home, add, or the link for the dashboard that you want to do. So all the link for your dashboard that you want to do will be here. Okay, so this is web development panel. Okay, so we've added image here. So all the contents of what you want to do, you can place them here. Then, so I'm going to do the text box and the absolute one that follows it. Okay, so here I can have my div class. I can call it maybe search box. Okay, so in the search box, it will have a relative position to be relative. Okay, so that the absolute one will be relative to it. So I call it search box. So it will have a position relative. Okay, so that's my absolute search results is going to be relative to that. Then I can have my input test. We will learn about input test when we get to form. Okay, so just know that if the input test, you write input element here, tag here, then type is test. Then if you want to display a test in it, then you call it placeholder. So the placeholder, the test you want it to be in the input test, you just write it. So maybe we just write search with 3 dots. Okay, then we end the search. Okay, so if I run this, okay, so that is it over here. So if you want to start your search, you can do it, but that's not what is our main focus. But anyway, I can just style it briefly just with the width. So you can call it search. So I'll give it a width of maybe 500. So I'll give the input box width of 500 pixels. Okay, so now okay, so now we will do our results. So our results, we can call a div called results. So class is equal to results. Okay, and so this is the absolute div. Okay, so in the results, normally it's given in the list, a URL list. So each of the results are going to be li. Okay, so then normally they are linked so that when you click, you go somewhere. So we have our link over here. Then this one is an example of a book which is being searched for. Okay, so we have web development for beginners, C# for the rest, so we can put them here. So web development for beginners. So we have close our A, we close our L. So I can just copy and paste and change the text. Okay. So this is just a demo. So in your actual lesson, you put the link here. It's just the interface we are focusing on. So here you can have web design for beginners. Here we can have C# for beginners. Okay. So now we are going to run our code. Okay. So as you can see, so we need to start this one. So we need to start this one. So now if you want to start a particular element in another element, first of all you can write the name of the class of your parent. You can write the class of your parent element, followed by the element you want to style it. Okay, so this is in the case where you want to start something which does not affect the entire page. So you write in order of their parents. So in this container, this is the parent class is results. So if I want to start the URL only relating to this parent lesson, I'm going to write my style as dot. Take note because we will need that knowledge next week when we are designing a page for next week and doing a next week practice. So you have dot, then results. So that's a class. So that's a parent. Then you leave a space. Then the element, if it's also another class, then dot the class. But if it's an element, then you enter the element. Okay. Now we don't want the bullet, so we'll give a style of list star now. So list star now, so that the bullet will disappear. So okay, so as you can see, the bullet has disappeared. Now by default UL are giving margin and padding, so we just want to get rid of them. So we give margin 0 pixels and padding 0 pixels. Okay. So now we can start our this one. If it is not yet an absolute div, maybe we have a content here. So maybe div, maybe class is equal to content. Maybe we have a content over here. Okay, so page content is here. Okay, now because it's not absolute. Now because we haven't added the absolute, it is a static position. So it doesn't overlap this one because this one will come first before this one. But when we change to absolute, it will overlap with this one because it will go below it. So it will no longer be static. So it will start at the position where we want it to, related to our parent. Our parent begins from here because our input is also in the parent. So our parent began from here. Okay. So now if we want to change this one, so now our search our results. So our results is going to be absolute. The position is going to be absolute. Okay. So I'll run it, then you see what I'm talking about. It will cover the text because and the input. Okay. So as you can see, it has read the text and the input. So we need to leave a little space for the input as well. So we give the top. So we just margin from here to here. The top value that we can give. So we can give a top of maybe 70 or 50 pixels, and let's see. So our top 50 pixels, we create room for the, so that it will not cover our input box. Okay, so we've given it a little space. Isn't that the 50 is even too much? So let's use our debugging, then we reduce the top value. So by now you should be mastering the debugging feature. You should be mastering the debugging feature of okay. So I want to reduce so that it goes a little bit below the inputs. Okay. So this is 20. Okay. So we give it 20. Then as you can see, because we don't have any background for it, the other tests are showing below it. So we give the background of white. Okay. Okay. Now we also give it a border around so that we can see the result box. Okay. So we give it a border. So we will see the border star in our subsequent distance. So the border, the thickness, we give it 1 pixels, and it's solid. Then the color, we give it black color. Okay. Okay. So if we want the width to take the entire get to this stage with our input this, and then we can give the same width. So we can give it a width of 500 because our input is also 500. So we can give it a width of 500 pixels. Okay, so it will have the same width as our input. Okay, seems like it is a little bit shorter than our input, so we can increase the width a little bit. Okay, so 504 pixels. Okay, now our links are being underlined, so we can make our link have test the creation none, so that they won't be underlined. So test the creation none. Okay, so they won't be underlined. Okay. Now, if you want our li to have a bottom line, then we can also style them so that each of our li will have a bottom line. Okay, so it will separate one from the other. So our results. So as I said, we will do it in order of the parents. So the parents div came first, and our ul followed. Then now we want to start our li, so then we will follow it by our li. So we have results, then we have ul, then we follow it with our li. Okay, so that's how it goes. This is a parent element. In this parent, we have our ul. In it, we have our li. So the star will write to affect the li that we have. So here, I want it to have a border button. So all the border buttons will have 1 pixel solid 1, 2, 3. Okay. So each of them will have black in their button. Okay, you can see. Then I can padding them. I can also give them a little bit space. That there will be a boundary inwardly for each of the links. So my li, the a in my li. So that you should also observe the order of my styling. The result box So I have my result bus, the URL, the L, and the A in this LI. Then this attribute I'm going to write is supposed to affect them. So now I want to give a padding. So if you want to make it a padding, the A, you have to give it a display block. And a certain padding dimension will not work. So padding, maybe I want the top should have 5 pixels. Then the right should have 20 pixels. Then the bottom should have 5 pixels. And the left should have 20 pixels. Okay. So as you know, it starts from the top. So top, right, bottom, left. Okay. So now if I refresh, okay, so as you can see, there are spaces. So from here I said 20. From the top 5, 5, and here I said 20. Okay. Now you can see that because this one has a bottom of 1 pixel and this one also have a bottom of 1 pixel, the two of them are joined. So this side is thicker. Okay. So in our subsequent this week we will see an attribute, but I will teach it now. So when we get there, we'll just briefly go over it. So here there is what we call nth child and the last child. Okay, so we have what we call the last child. So the last child of an element is the last element you are being referred to. Then you give it an attribute. So for example, if I have this, all these ones are Li. So all my Li, so all these attributes affect all my Li. So if I don't want the last one of my Li to have a border button, then I have to add last child on this one. So on the next star, which I'm going to write, to only affect my last child of my Li. So I'll just put a column here. Then I'll write last child. Okay. So this affects the last child of all my Li I have in my URL of my results and div. So here I'll make it a border button to be 0. So it will not have any border at all. Okay. So now so as you can see, this one doesn't have a button, so it makes it the thickness has vanished. So that's how last child works. So the last child of an element, or the order in which you put it, is the last element you are being referred to. So all these ones are our list. So the list in our URL in this div, or they all have border button. But the last one of them, so this one is the last one of them, you don't want it to have any border button. So we give the border, the pixel to be 0 pixels, so the border goes away. Okay. So are we done with everything? So I think that's it. So in our actual production, this result will not show until users type the result pops up. So in our actual production, result div will give it a display to be none. So when users start typing, before we will display it, so display none. Okay. So as you can see, it has disappeared. So when users start typing, so typing, then we will write the code to make it to disable the display. So we make it block. Then the result will show in our result div. Okay. So basically that's it for that part. So those of you who are doing web development, you need this concept to write your own interface for your login page. And this concept is not only for people who be doing web development. Like you saw on the YouTube, they are also having fixed divs and the rest. So you should be able to know how to do this. And so you can design you can have your own interface in mind. You can even sketch it on paper. Then you just code them, position the content how you want it. The ones which are fixed, you make them fixed. The ones which are absolute, you make them absolute. If you know all the concepts. Okay, so we'll move on. So this one has it has the code. So the code may be different from mine, but it should be the same concept. So because I wasn't looking at the code when I was writing this, and so but the same. So if you want to, you can also try this code as well. But remember, when you are doing this week's task, you should remember to apply all those ones. So this week's task, you need left, you need top fixed, then you need the content side. So the top is fixed, and the left is also fixed, but the content you give it an absolute position. Then you leave the spaces at the top. You leave a little bit top space so that it will not overlap with your top fixed position. Okay, now we are on colors. So colors normally gives the colors of the text you want to use on an element. So this we've seen a couple of times. So if you want to give a color to an element, we use the color attributes. So if you write color, then you specify the attributes. So the colors, you can use a plain word colors like red, blue, green, and the rest. But there is a color code, like I explained to you earlier on. This is for white. Okay, the gray one, the little bit gray one is F5, F5, F5. And if you are using the color code, it starts with the number tag, the number hash number, the number key sign. So you have that one, then you write the color code. So if you are you know Photoshop, in Photoshop you can pick colors from an image. So if you are working for a company and they have a dominant color in their logo, you can pick their color from the logo using the Photoshop. So in the Photoshop, if you click on the text, okay, there is a place where when you click on the color, there's the ink icon. You just put it on the image, any part where you want to pick the color, you can when you click on the color code will show, and you can use the color code in your page. So these are a list of color codes. You can also Google them. So if you need any of these color codes, you just use them. Remember that I start with the number sign before those numbers. Okay. So like this white is use a number sign before you write this text over. So if any of these colors is what you want, then you can just use it. If not, you can Google your colors that you want. So in this example, this page will have a color of red, and this one the div. So this div will have a color of white. So all the divs that you call, they all have a color of white. Okay. So in this case, maybe you have a background of green or something. So you want the color of the text to be white. Then here, all the paragraphs will have a color of their text will have a color of red. So since you've seen this one a couple of times, I'll jump in it. Now, if you want to give your page a particular font family, a font type, whether your page or your element, you use a font family attribute or property. So when you call font family with a column, then you specify the font type that you want to use. So in the font types, you have examples. Then we have the font types over here. So if you want to use any of these font types, so in this example, in the above example, we use a Times New Roman, this example. So if you want to use this one too, you can place it over there. So let's take an example. Okay, so in our page that we can have it here. So you can change. Okay, so we can have our body style. We can have that style over there. Okay, so in order for us to see the text, we have to let our results, we give a result display none so that it doesn't cover our text. Okay, so you can change to different font types and see the effects of them. So where you have your font family, so you just change to all the ones that we have, so you can see the effects of them. So if you are developing a page, then you can choose which one is fancy for you to use. So all these ones are the font types you can use, so you can pick any of them and try them. So we are setting font size. So to change the size of a font, we use a font size property. So font with a dash size, then you specify the size that you want. So if I want my page to have a font size of 12, so I'll just write that my body. So if you write any attribute in the body, it affects the entire page element. So if I want the font size to be 12, then I can have 12 pixels over here. Okay. So once you have it, all the fonts or the text on your page will have that font size. As you can see, the size has decreased. Okay. So if you want a particular element to have different font size, then you have to give it and you have to style it so that that element has a different font size. So that's it for font size. Then bolding a text. So to bold a text, we use font weight. So if I want to bold, for example, this text, okay, I can give it a style of font weight bold. So font weight bold will bold it. So let me do it with my debugging lesson. Okay, so if you want to change something on the browser, when you click on that element, you can put the star in between your curly brackets. So you just put the arrow key, then you click on the element. So I want to make this one bold. So I just click on that element. So on that element, you can see that there is a element attribute that I can put the star there. So here I can make font weight. Okay, so I give the font weight bold. So as you can see, it has bolded my text. So to bold a text, you just use the font weight, then you specify bold to bold it. There are some font weight that you can also put values there. So based on the value you put and how thick the font is going to be like. Okay, but basically, if you want a font to be bold, you just give the font weight bold. Then we have the font style property. If you want an italic, the text to be italic, you just give the font style italic. So this one, if I want the text to be italic, I just give the font style. Okay, then italic. So these are the options you can have: narrate, initial, italic, normal, oblique, revert. So you can choose any of them. Then you can see its effects. Okay, so you can choose any. So you see the oblique, how it does it. So if you choose italic too, okay, you see what it does it. Okay, so those are the font styles. So how you want to style it? You use the attribute called font style. So you want to style your elements, you use the attribute called font style. Then you have the background color. To give a color, this one you seen it a couple of times. To give a color to a body or your element, you just give it a background and you specify the color. So this is a color code as we've seen. This gives a little bit gray background, which we've seen it a couple of times. So the background keyword or attribute is used to assign the background color. You can also use the background color this way. So either you just write background and you specify the color either in color code or plain text. It gives the background color. So this one you saw in our many of our examples. If you want the background color of the body, and if you want the background color in the class, you just call it, then you have it there. Then we have background image. So we have our background image. So if you want to add a background image, maybe you want the body to have a background image, then you use the background image property. So just background dash image, then the URL is the path where the image can be found. If the image is found on the internet, here you have your HTTP or HTTPS path over here. But if it's found on the project on your page, then you should have the path where that will be found. So if, for example, you have this one in your CSS, so if you have it in your CSS and the image is in the images folder, then you need to use a two dot. So the two dot exit from that folder into the mother folder. So in this example what I've explained, so the two dots will exit if you are writing your CSS in your CSS folder in the CSS file, then the image is not in folder. So you need to exit. So you have to write two dots, which means that it will exit that folder. After exiting the folder, it also has to exit another folder. Then another two dots with a slash will come. Okay, so as many folders that it needs to exit before it meets the actual folder with the image, then you have your exiting over here. So here, if it's in a CSS folder, you just exit, and the image is in the images folder in where your page is. You just exit it once. So you have two dots with a slash. Then you have your image folder, then the name of your image. But if you are writing the style in the head directly, then the image, if the image is the images folder, just images slash the name of the image. If it's in the same place as the file, it's just the name of the file. Okay, so we'll have our example. So here we want to have a background image. Okay, so the URL. So in the URL you specify the path of your URL. So here I'm using the banner as an example. So I have images slash banner dot jpeg. We already have our banner image there. Okay. So it means this banner image is found in my images folder. And my images folder is in the same place where my index.php file is. Okay. So if this style is in the CSS, then I need to exit the CSS folder before I will come to the images folder, before I will come to the banner folder. But this is the path where I can find my image. So now if I refresh, okay, so I can see that's it. Okay, so as we will see, if the image doesn't cover the entire screen, it will be repeating itself. So if you don't want it to repeat, as it will be explained here. Okay, so if you don't want it to repeat, you use the property background repeat, no repeat. So if I add this one to it, it will not repeat. So the image will show only one. So if it doesn't cover the entire space, the other where it covers, it will end over there. Okay, so no repeat. So in this case, it means it's not this side. The other ones will not be repeated. It will only be just once. Okay, so as you can see, it is only just at that position. Then we continue. So if you don't want it to be repeated, just background, then dash repeat, no repeat. It will not, the background image will not repeat. Now we need the background cover. Okay, so if you want it to be a cover where it will cover the entire space, and then you use a background attachment fix, then background size is going to be covered. Okay, so I'm going to we have this already, so I'm going to copy this and see. So with the cover, it adjusts to the image. So some part of the image will be cut. They just adaptable to the image you are using by its entire screen. Okay, so as you can see, it has covered the entire screen. Okay. So there are some parts here, but because this one is not there, so you can't see. So I make this one display none. If I hide it, you see the other part. Okay. So if I hide that part, then you can see that it is over there. So it covers the entire screen. So it adapts to the lesson. It adapts to the screen. So in some images which are bigger, some parts will be cut just for it to not to be adapt to the screen so for example, if I reduce the screen of this one, you can see that it will be adapting. Okay. So you see that some parts are not showing, some parts are cut. Okay. So that is it. But it will cover the entire screen. So that's it. If you want your image to cover the entire screen so that the content will be inside your body, then you can also style it that way. So you just need the background attachment fixed, then background size cover to make it. Now if you want it to be stretched, now if you want your background image to be stretched, then here the background size is no longer going to be covered, but it's going to be 100%, 100%. And that one, it will cover this thing, but your image will be stretched if it is not, it doesn't fit the size. Okay, so here, okay, so if I run this one, so you can see the image is a little bit stretched than the previous one. So the image is a little bit stretched. So let me this part. So display none, make it disappear. So I believe you are learning the debugging aspect. So if you want to debug to see something and you want to get rid of a particular element, just give it a display none attribute, and that element just disappear. Then you can monitor on where you want to focus. Okay, so that's the stretch one. So the stretch, it will a little bit distorted because it will stretch 100%, but the cover, it will adapt it to it so that it will adapt. Okay, so as you can see the difference with the cover. Some part of the image is cut, but with the stretch, you can see that it takes the entire width, 100 width. So you can see that the image is a little bit distorted. If it will cover, some parts will be cut based on your screen size. Okay, so that is it for the cover one. Then border styles. So we are on border styles. So you've seen an example of the border styles where you have border, then you specify the thickness and the color. Okay, but we'll briefly talk about this. So now we give you a border radius. So when we border radius, so the border radius, if you want the entire element to be given the border for both of all the corners, so the corner here, the corner there, over here there, and over there, then you just specify the border radius pixel. So this border radius, and give how much curve you want. So how much curve you want, you just specify it, and the color that you want. Okay. So I'm going to do an example. So I will have in our result lesson. I'm going to pick up this one. In our result, if I want it to have a border radius of maybe 20, so that you see how there will be curve around it. So border radius 20. So if I run this, okay. So as you can see, mine has a cover radius. So from here to here, all of them has 20 curves around it. So that's basically what we to the border radius. So if you want a curve around it, so if you don't specify If you just write it only once, it covers the entire canvas. Now, if you want only for the top and for the so based on what you want, then you can also specify it. So if you want to specify at the radius for all the 4 corners, it starts from here. So if you write 0, it means you don't have any radius here, and if you write something here, then you have the curve. So if you don't want the part to be curved, just give it a value of 0. So let's say, for example, we want only our bottom, only this side and that side to be curved, and this side and that side that we don't want any curve. Then we said the first one, the left one, the top left, it begins from the top left. So we have 0 pixel from the top left. Then we have our right left also 0 pixel. Okay. Our top right also 0 pixel. Then our bottom right, we have 20 pixels. And our bottom left, we have 20 pixels. Okay. So both the top left and the top right will have 0 pixels, and the bottom right and the bottom left will have 20 pixels. So here is the bottom left, and here is the bottom right, and here is the top left, and here is the top right. So if I refresh it, okay, so as you can see, only this part has been curved. Okay, so you can play with it. If you want only this part to be curved and that part to be curved, then this one to be 0 and that one to be 0, change it and just see the outcome. Okay, so that one I think you should be able to be. So just change those dimensions. But what you should know is that here is that is the first one. It begins from here. It begins from here, there. So the value to specify. If it's 0, it means you don't want any border there. So no radius will be set over there. Okay, so I've explained this one already. Okay. So if you want to create a circular, image, a circular element, for example, in the shopping cart, most often the number of items put in the cart normally is placed in a circular element. Or another example is notification, maybe alert. Normally alerts, then there may be red circular element with the text inside. So that one, we give the border radius to be 50%. So you give a border radius of 50% to make it circular. Then you give it a height and a width based on what you want. Then if you want the text to fit well in your box, then the line height should be the same dimension as you give the line height, which is the same dimension as your width and your height. So once you've done that, then if you want it to have a little padding, then you give it a little padding so that the text will not be direct at the beginning. Then you can give it a text align center so that the text will be in the middle. Then if you even it a background color, then the appropriate color to use is white. So we can see this example. If we have our notification star, okay. So next to my image, I'm going to call my logo image. I'm going to call my notification. So I can call a span. A span is an inline element, so it will be inline with another element you want to use. So span, I call it class notification. Okay. Then I give it a value of maybe 2. And I end my span. Okay. So if I refresh this one, okay. So as you can see, the 2 is over there. So that's the notification. So that's for circular. So if you want to have a circular element, then you can have the border radius. So the border radius is supposed to be 50%. Your border radius is supposed to be 50%. And if you want the text to be centered, or text align is supposed to be centered. Okay. So that's for the issue. So the key thing is that the border radius is supposed to be 50%, and your width and your height should be of the same value, and your line height should be of the same value as your width and the height, so that the text fits well in it. Okay. Now, if you are styling the boundaries, as we've seen in the when we are doing the positions, if you are styling the boundaries, you can specify the type of style you want to use. So these are body styles. We have dotted. So the dotted produces a dotted boundary. The dash produces dash boundary. The solid produces solid boundary. And double produces double boundary. Then groove and the rest. Okay. So in this example, we have the dot, the dash, solid, double, and the rest. So in your we just have this one. I'm going to run this, but when you are practicing, you can add the other ones as well. So I think we finished with the dashboard, so I can get rid of it, and let's put a different. Okay. So in this example, we have the dotted, we have the dash, we have the solid, we have the double border. So if I run, okay. So if I run, you can see all of them. So we have the dotted, we have the double, we have the solid, then we have the dash. So you can also do the other ones as well. So the other styles we have, so you can try all of them. The group, the read, the insert, the none, hidden, and the rest. You try all of them. Okay, so setting border and border color and thickness. Okay, so as you've seen in our previous example, if you want all the borders to have a particular thickness and a particular color, then you use this star. So in this star, in this attribute, you just write border, then the thickness follows. So you specify the thickness in pixels, then you specify the type of border style it is. So if you want it to be solid, then solid. If you want it to be dotted, dotted. If you want it to be dashed, dashed. Then you specify followed by the color you want. So if you want it to be red, this is black color code. So if you want it to be black color, then it will be that. So as you can see in our dashboard, in our results dashboard, we bordered our descent. So in that one, we use this example. We wrote border, then with the thickness was 1 pixels, and the type of border style is solid, then the color is black. Okay, so you can as well. Okay, so let's test some of this. So I'm going to copy it and put in our style. Okay, so in our style, so I'm going to give them red, different colors. So you can see it a little bit yellow. Okay, so I'll just call them. So class border, in this class dash. Then which other one? Okay, then dotted. I have dotted, class dotted. This one is actually dotted. The solid one, that class is dotted. This one is dotted. Okay. So if I run this, okay, so as you can see, this one is dotted and this one is solid. the other one is dashed. Okay. So this one is for all the boundaries. If you want a particular one for top, bottom, and the rest, then just write border dash. Then if it's top, border top. If it is left, border left. If it is bottom, border bottom. If it is so, as you can see, we have border top is to only affect the top border, border bottom it will only affect the left. So border left will affect the left, border top will affect only the top, and border right will only affect the right, and border bottom will only affect the bottom. Okay, so basically that's it. So you saw the border bottom when we were doing the li for our results. We gave each of the li a border bottom, so there were lines below them, all of them. Then we have our last chart. So in our last chart, then we wrote that our last chart shouldn't have any border. Then we set our thickness to be 0, so the border disappear. Okay, so that is it for today. And like I said, your assignment is supposed to design a page that has top part fixed and about 20% of the left side also fixed, just like the YouTube website. So you have the left part of the descent fixed and the top part also fixed. Then you have the content inside. Make sure none of the content is overlap with the top or the left. So you do it. If you have any challenge, you just contact me. Let's see what you might be doing wrong. Okay. So what have we learned today? We've learned a lot today. We've learned how you can position div next to each other. We've learned how you can position menus next to each other so that they all be in line with each other. We've learned all the positions, the static. We've learned the sticky, we learned the relative, we learned the fixed, and we learned the absolute. And we saw some differences between the fixed and the absolute. The fixed is relative to the viewport, relative to the screen. But for the absolute, relative to a parent, you can give it relative to a parent. If you don't specify the parent to be parent position to be relative, the absolute days will be referring to the viewport. If you don't specify the parent position to be relative, then it will be using the viewport, that's the screen. So always remember, if you want your absolute to be related to a particular parent, then you set the position of the parent to be relative. Then we also saw that the difference between the fixed and the absolute is that with the fixed, it doesn't scroll by default. So it doesn't scroll by default, but with the absolute, if there is overflow, it automatically is scrolling. So places where you use your fixed element, if it will overflow, then you have to write on over star. So on over it will show the Y overflow. The Y overflow will be scrollable. So later on in our subsequent weeks, we will see that feature as well with some hover attribute that you can bring. Okay. Then we also talked the last chart. We said the last chart is the last element of what you are being referred to, the attribute you attach to it as the last chart. It will affect only that last chart. And we saw an example in our results, li in our results. The last li, we don't want it to have a border button, so we use the last chart on that and the li and star, and give it a border bottom of 0 pixels, so it didn't show on our li. The border at the bottom didn't show on our li. Then we also saw how you overlap a text over an image. Now, if the image is an absolute, it will be at the top of your of your text. So you need to set Z index negative, which is lower than the Z index of the other elements, so that the image will be in the background where the text comes in front. So for overlapping elements, the higher the Z index, then the higher it is, then it will be in front of the lower ones. So based on what you want to do and the Z index you need to set. Okay, saying all that. Then we saw the background image. Now you can use a background image. Then if you want the background image to be repeated, by default it will be repeating. If you don't want it to repeat, then you set the background repeat property to no repeat. Then if you want your image to cover the entire screen, then you also set the background size to cover, and attachment to the background attachment to be fixed. Then we also saw the stretching the background image, and that one too. We saw you give the background size 100%. Then we also saw how you can use a font, different font types by setting the font family in your star. Okay, so that is it for today. And remember, Kuulchat is supported by donation, and that's how they are able to support themselves and motivate them to be available to assist you with your programming problems, and as well as prepare the videos for you, and as well as be online to be assisting you. So the amount you have, you can donate. So by now you should know where the donation box is. So if you click on the menu, you click on donate. So when you click on the donate, it takes you to the page where you can make your donation. So when you click on it, it takes you to the page where you can make your donation. So if you are in Ghana, you can choose your method of payment. If you are abroad, then you can have a card method of payment. Then you can use your card to make payments. Okay, but if you want, you have to contact me. You know where to contact me. If you go to the home page of the page, if you've logged in already, there is chat with an instructor. So you just click on it and send me a message. If you're having an error, you can send me a message. You can even send your HTML code. Then I can go over and I can show you the line where you are having your challenges. Okay, so the motive of Kuulchat is to help you to master the programming as well as your web design and any other IT related. So have a nice day and hope to see you next week. Next week we also have a practice session where we'll be designing a web page based on the knowledge that we've acquired. So before we'll top up with a sliding image. So we'll be showing sliding image on our web page. Then in the sliding image, we'll also cover some brief topic. Then we'll design a complete, almost complete website. And you can, in that case, you will be encouraged to design it based on the knowledge you have. Then you can make reference to the ones that I will also design, as well as the code that I will put on the page as well. But that's the end for today, and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a lovely day. Bye.